This is lesson 3 in our CKLA Domain 8 Animals and Habitats unit. So far we have learned that a habitat is a place where animals and plants can live, and a lot of these animals and plants have adapted or changed to suit that environment. We've also learned that all living things need food and water in order to survive, and a lot of living things also need some kind of shelter to survive their habitat as well. And last lesson, we learned about the Arctic tundra and the Arctic Ocean habitats. We learned that they were very cold, we learned that they were covered in snow and ice, and animals have to adapt by having thick fur and blubber to keep them warm in that habitat. So today we're going to do a new reading about a new habitat. And at the end of this lesson, you're going to be able to explain key parts of the desert habitat and explain how desert animals have adapted or changed to live in this habitat. Now, like always, before we start, we do have some vocabulary words that you will hear in this reading. The first one is camouflage, and that means to blend in or hide in the natural surroundings. Carnivore, an animal that consumes other animals, or an animal that eats other animals and meat. So a carnivore only eats meat. Herbivore is an animal that eats only plants or plant products. So an herbivore is an animal that only eats plants. Nocturnal means you're active at night. Omnivore is an animal that eats both plants and other animals. So an omnivore eats both plants and meat. And scavengers. Scavengers are animals that eat meat, so they're carnivores, but that meat is waste left behind by other animals. So this is a picture of the habitat we're looking at today, and as we can see, it's clearly very different from the Arctic habitats we talked about last lesson. So this is a picture of the desert. So if you remember our stories from Mesopotamia and Egypt, we've seen these desert pictures because they were also desert climates, and we know that they're very, very hot. They have a lot of sand, and as we can see from this picture and from our background knowledge from the other lessons we've had, there are not very many trees and grass and plants in the desert. And we can know that because not a lot of rain falls in this desert, so it's also a very dry climate, a very dry habitat. So we are going to look into this world of the desert habitat with our friend Rattenborough. So where we are right now, we're actually in the Sonoran Desert, which is a very specific desert right over here. This area is where we are right now in the Sonoran Desert, but that is not the only desert habitat and the only desert climate in the world. We are just focusing specifically in this lesson on the Sonoran Desert. After nearly freezing and almost becoming a polar bear snack in the Arctic, I thought we should go someplace where my whiskers and tail could thaw out and warm up. So I've brought you to the desert. There are many deserts all over the world. You know that you're in a desert when it doesn't rain very much. Many deserts can also be very hot. Because it's so hot and dry, only certain types of plants and animals can live there. Welcome to the Sonoran Desert in the southwestern part of the United States in the northwestern part of Mexico. The temperature is quite hot during the day, and it doesn't rain very much. The heat and lack of rain make it hard for some plants and animals to live in the desert. They must all be specially adapted to live in the hot weather and survive with very little rain. How do they do it? Some plants can save and store water inside their plant parts when it does not rain. Other plants grow only in shady areas near mountains or rocks. Because there are very few plants that can be used as shelter, the animals that have adapted to living in the desert often seek shelter underground and make their homes under the sand. Living underground helps them stay cool when it gets hot, and it keeps them hidden from other animals that may want to eat them for lunch. Ouch! What did I just walk into? Aha! Here is one plant that lives in the Sonoran Desert. The saguaro cactus is the world's largest cactus. Cacti don't have leaves. They have prickly spines instead, which is exactly why it hurts so much to touch this one. The incredible saguaro lives for up to 200 years, and in that time can grow as high as a house and can weigh as much as several cars. The most amazing thing about the saguaro is that it is a habitat in itself. That's right. Not only does it manage to live and thrive in a desert habitat, but just by being there, it provides food, water, and shelter to many different animals. Let me get my climbing gear out and some gloves to protect me from these sharp spines, and I'll meet you at the top. You already know that it hardly ever rains in the desert, but when it does, the saguaro cactus saves and stores huge quantities of water in its roots and stems. The cactus saves the extra water and uses it to survive during those times when it is very dry and does not rain. In the spring, white flowers grow on the saguaro. At night, when the desert cools down, these flowers open up to show sweet nectar, which butterflies, bats, and birds feed on before the flowers close the next day when it is once again very hot. In the summer, red fruit begins to grow on the saguaro. Many animals eat the fruit of the cactus. Here is an interesting bird called the Gila woodpecker. The Gila pecks holes into the soft cactus with its beak to make a nest for its eggs. The Gila woodpecker is an omnivore. An omnivore is an animal that eats both plants and other animals. Gilas feed on cactus fruit and berries, as well as insects that have invaded the saguaro. Thankfully, I brought a sandwich, so I won't have to join these Gilas for a buggy lunch. It really is way too hot for a regular rat like me to live here. I am so glad I brought my fan with me. Interestingly enough, birds like this Gila woodpecker can live in the desert habitat because their feathers help protect them from the hot desert sun by trapping cool air next to their skin. Still, most birds only go out to feed in the early morning or evening when it's cooler outside. From noon to late afternoon, many of these birds seek shelter in the holes that they have dug in a cactus or in other shady places. Here's another bird that makes his home in the saguaro cactus. It's the elf owl. The elf owl, the world's smallest owl, is only 5 inches long. That's just a bit bigger than one of your hands. It moves into nests that have been abandoned by Gila woodpeckers. The elf owl, like most owls, is nocturnal, which means that it rests during the day and wakes up at night to hunt for food. The elf owl is also a carnivore. A carnivore is an animal that eats only other animals, no plants. It uses its large eyes to hunt in the dark night for bugs that live in the desert. Most owls eat mice and, I'm sad to say this, rats. But I think I'm safe from the elf owl because I'm bigger than it is. Oh, look, here comes a desert cottontail rabbit, another animal that lives in the Sonoran Desert. The desert cottontail looks a little like the Arctic hare we saw in the tundra, but it has larger ears and longer back legs. Desert cottontail rabbits are herbivores. Herbivores are animals that only eat plants, no other animals. The desert cottontail eats grass and even cacti. Smaller animals like the desert cottontail always need to watch out for larger animals in the desert that might eat them. Many animals and plants are part of a cycle called the food chain. You will learn more about the food chain in the next read aloud. Coyotes, for instance, like to eat rabbits. In fact, there's a coyote coming this way, so let's stay up here and watch it. Coyotes are found all over the United States, including the Sonoran Desert. As you can see, the coyote has a light tan-colored coat to help reflect the sun's rays and to camouflage it. Coyotes are carnivores like the elf owls. Coyotes have a very good sense of smell, hearing, and vision, and they can run very fast, which means they are excellent hunters. They are also scavengers. Coyotes live in dens, which they make by burrowing into the ground. I think this one has smelled something because he's just run off. Now, I'm getting down from this cactus before another coyote comes along to make me its dinner. It seems like rats are on the menu everywhere I go. So with that ends our reading all about the Sonoran Desert. I would like you to please go back to Seesaw and do the activity that goes along with this reading. If you need to recap anything that you've heard, keep this tab open on the side and go back to this video as much as you need to while you are finishing the activity for the Sonoran Desert Habitat.